Philip. I'm here joined by Christopher, who's going to teach a course on SPhil on Schelling's Freedom Essay, and seminar is going to be starting this Sunday. So we've gotten here together to have a chat about the course, maybe hash out some questions, hash out some nitty-gritty details about Schelling's personal life. I know that people are really always interested in the saucy details, but really we're just like having a hang here. And if people have questions about the course and what we're going to be up to, feel free to post in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that. So hello, Christopher. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for hosting this live event, Philip. I'm really appreciative.
Okay, that's good. It's great to have you. I'm just going to check the technicals to see if we are actually live. It looks like we are. Okay, yeah, and there we are. There's a chat there. Just making sure things work. I did have some questions.
You did? Great.
Yes. So I think you quote this in the description of the course. Schelling used the essay, like the freedom essay, to, quote, strike down the many prejudices and the much loose and shallow chatter. So against whom was Schelling primarily targeting with this polemic? What was he trying to put an end to?
That's a very good question. So I guess we can kind of go back to 1802 when Schelling and Hegel were doing a journal together. They were doing one on speculative philosophy and philosophy and carrying on the project that Kant left behind, but doing a more mature movement away from objective idealism, maybe into absolute idealism. Of course, there's Fichte. Fichte was not happy with the movement of thought that Schelling and Hegel were moving forward to. There was also someone named Karl Eschmeyer, who was also a critic of Schelling.
Yeah.
Who read Schelling's 1804 small treatise, Philosophie und Religion, or Philosophy and Religion, and was not very, had questions about God's existence and God's role within the actual small treatise that he wrote. And of course, there's Hegel. Schelling felt when he released the 1802 Bruno work, he felt that not a lot of thinkers understood the main metaphysical argument that he was trying to get at. And so he tried to correct that by releasing this work called Philosophy and Religion, which was to show the dynamic relation between theology and philosophy and their roles together. And then he was still unhappy with philosophy and religion. So he is, in a sense, responding to Hegel's remarks about his concept of the absolute and his concept of indifference and his concept of intellectual intuition. He's also responding to Fichte's criticism, Fichte is lamenting against Schelling's work, his transcendental philosophy, his system of identity. Eschmeyer has serious concerns about the relation between nature and mind in his later work. And I would say the other person that really is the heart of this chatter next to Hegel is Jacobi, because in 1807, as I say in my lecture, Schelling took a position as the vice president of the Bavarian Academy of the Arts and Sciences. And his boss ahead of him was, of course, Friedrich Heinrich Jacobi, who's the president. At the time, Schelling was also tutoring Maximilian II and was doing other things. He was, in 1818, he was doing archaeological digs in Italy
Yeah.
by Johann Wagner. But there was a lot of chatter around Schelling, and this all stemmed from him leaving Jena to when he got to Würzburg and Ingolstadt, and then finally he's dealing with a lot of backlash on his work, especially his new work, his 1801 presentation, which was very Spinozistic, and of course, in the background, him to a letter to Hegel once stated, he said that I have a new teacher. That teacher is Spinoza, which shocked Hegel actually at the time too. So there's a lot going on here. It's a massive work of debate. There's also Friedrich Schlegel,
Yeah.
who now Schlegel was like this with Novalis, and when Novalis died, it was Friedrich Schlegel writing his philosophy by himself. So there are multiple people here. He's trying to stamp out, mostly Eschmeyer, mostly Fichte, and I would also say Jacobi, of course, and Hegel. So these people are right there at the heart of everything. And to top it all off, Heinrich Heine, who also 5 years later talks about Schelling's philosophy is like the whirling of the dervishes. It's so confused that when you finish whirling, you don't know left from right. So I mean, he's dealing with a lot of chatter around him that he's trying to make something systematic and something that he's happy about, which is why when he releases the Freedom Essay, he releases 4 other essays with it. His earlier essays that he thinks are
Right.
very smooth and can get out a proper system there.
Yeah. So you mentioned Spinoza. Isn't Schelling kind of criticizing Spinoza in the Freedom Essay?
Yes. So I would say that Schelling has 2 mentors after he leaves Tübingen. I would say Fichte is one of them, and the other is Spinoza. And he's always playing with the 2 of them. He moves away from Fichte and closer to Spinoza in 1801. And in that time period, he's experimenting with Spinoza's ethics. Like he asks Goethe, Goethe, please send me your Spinoza books. I want to read the ethics. And he writes his Darstellung, my presentation text,
Yeah.
using Spinoza's techniques of axioms and corollaries and propositions.
As one does, when you start reading Spinoza, you become a Spinozist, and everything is just a geometrical method.
Yeah, everything is just a geometrical method. Yeah, you're right. But something happens because of Jacobi's massive lamenting against pantheism, Spinozaism. One has to be quite very, very careful about how they use the word Spinozaism, especially when your boss is Jacobi and you're in this Academy of the Sciences and Arts in Bavaria, Catholic area, and of course Schelling is a Protestant. So he's got to answer all of these questions. He's got to debate this chatter that's around him. And so this is why it's interesting. The Freedom Essay doesn't really begin until on page 27. So he's really trying to hammer down that chatter from page 1 all the way to 27,
It's
which
like
is
a quarter of the book. It's just on the chatter.
Yeah, a large portion of the book is on the chatter. You're right. Because remember, he's quite unsatisfied with the 1804 small treatise on philosophy and religion, and he was extremely unhappy with his Bruno dialogue, which was really him answering Fichte's questions and him, going against Fichte's philosophy. But you're right. He is distancing himself from Spinoza. He actually states in one of our readings that Spinoza's philosophy is like a Pygmalion statue, and that what it needs is the warm breath of love. It needs the spiritualization. It needs the idealistic principle, but at the
So for
same
people who
time,
don't know, what is the Pygmalion statue?
it's a Pygmalion statue is like it looks. It's Greek art, but it's frozen. There's no. How do I explain this?
No
How do I?
action, no movement or
There's no
dynamism.
action, no movement. It's just like a frozen scene almost. And he
Okay.
says that it looks almost like a first sketch. And he says Spinoza's philosophy is a one-sided realism that looks like a Pygmalion statue, a first sketch. There's no life to it, no breath to it. Um, it needs to be animated, right?
Right. So can you be more specific as to what is the problem that Schelling identifies with Spinoza? Because Hegel has a gripe with Spinoza's method, I know, but what is like Schelling's take on Spinoza? What is he like unhappy with or unsatisfied with?
Well, first and foremost, he thinks that Spinoza is not a pantheist. He thinks
Okay.
Spinoza is some form of fatalist or suffers fatalism, suffers to fatalism, sorry. He also thinks that what Spinoza represents is not a form of idealism, but a form of one-sided realism. He thinks that now realism needs to be the ground of a philosophy, and idealism needs to be the soul of it. So body and mind. He makes this really nice thing. He says philosophy. He says idealism is the soul of philosophy. Realism is its body. Only the two together can create a whole. But he also has several other problems. He thinks that Spinoza's philosophy ruins the understanding of freedom. He thinks it's just a deterministic system, and
Right.
that even, and this is the key thing for him, that even the will is seen as a mere thing. So all of life is kind of just mere things, and he finds this terribly problematic. He wants to,
Okay.
as he says, he wants to make everything kind of organic, dynamic. He wants to talk about the life of things. He even wants to talk about God as a living being as well too, not an abstract concept. So I would say his problems are that Spinoza makes everything into a mere thing, including the human will. That he is that there is no conception of freedom but determinism, and that Spinoza's real error is blending creator and creation. So there's
Mhm.
almost a blemish, like a divine blemish, involved in the cosmos. So he has serious issues with many of the ethics. He thinks Spinoza's idea of God having of the immanence of things in God as a definition of pantheism is all right. He likes that idea, but he has to be very specific about where human beings and life become. Where do they become? Do they become in God? And if that's the case, then we have a problem here. Where does the finite and the infinite meet? And does that mean that everything is as he says, modified God? And so this is why the third lecture, sorry, on the ground was so important,
Yeah.
about the independence of the human being within the ground, the problem of evil. And as you'll see, the next lecture, we talk about the centrum and personality. So the beginning of the center, the soul in the individual, and personality will be the fourth lecture. And everyone will see now what Schelling is really getting at.
Right. So he has this idea of the centrum, and that's like the key to personality and the potential for genuine freedom. Can you say just very shortly, like why is it called centrum? What is it? Is it what's the concept? What's the basic idea?
So he gets this idea from Franz von Botter.
Ah,
And Botter has this idea that all beings have their own ground, but a ground that in the very center of it is their true being, the center of, like a circle, and he draws a circle with a dot in it, and he says that all beings are centered. They're centered in freedom, they're centered in their life. However, a human can also become ill, or can become sick, can become idle, if that centrum or center moves to the periphery, where it allows anything in, where anything can take over and realign the forces of the human being. And this is what evil is for Schelling. It's the reversal of the principles. It's the removal of the center or the centrum to the periphery, allowing our desire, our craving to completely just take over ourselves. Where we don't really know who we are anymore. We're just empty in a sense. There's that phrase, empty. I'm empty. I feel empty inside, or so on. To get a little deep there, the centrum is the point of personality. It's the seat, let's say, the seed of freedom. Schelling uses that exact same definition.
Right.
And the reason why is it's that point. It's the point of where personality begins, but doesn't end. You know, like he always says, there's two beginnings. There's the beginning of the beginning, and the beginning of your own. How does he say it? He says, every personality begins, but that beginning happens outside of time. It happens in eternity. And what he means by that is, when you change as an individual, right? Like, say your partner or your friend notices a change in you. You're not the first person to recognize the change. Your friends are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even realize that you've changed. You don't even realize that the principles inside you have realigned, or that you feel a different way about it. So personality and the center is aligned with the will and aligned with all of these predicates that he brought up: groundlessness, eternality of time, all of these things that he brought up when he was talking about the will. So it's all aligned. The center is like the ground of personality. It's also the seed of that personality. But the removal of the ground, the removal of the center, allows for complete chaos to unfurl inside a human being.
Okay.
If that's clear. I'm sorry if it's not clear.
Well, that's what the course is about, to make it super clear, right? I mean, I only asked you for like the rough sketch and the basic idea. But I'm wondering as to, well, I have actually two questions. Like, one is theoretical and the other is practical. So maybe the theoretical first is, how does Schelling derive the centrum? Right? How does it work? From what does it follow? Because it sounds like it's something relevant to at least living beings, not all things. Or
right.
Is it like, do rocks have a centrum in that sense? Right?
There you go. And this is one of the central questions.
The central questions of the centrum. Stay tuned.
Yes. Schelling states that all living beings born in the ground, right, God, or right, the ground of God's existence, this ground, which is in God, but yet at the same time separated, but yet co-eternal. And it's a paradox. He brings up this paradox of being in, but also separate. This represents what right. It's co-joint. Yeah, the co-jointure. He calls it fall. It represents the biblical fall, the separation, the movement of knowing good and, I guess, let's just say that. Now, oh boy, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, Philip. I completely lost my train of thought with where I was going with that.
You lost the center. Damn it.
Yes.
The one you were supposed to keep track of. It went out to the periphery.
I went completely to the periphery, lost it all. Went completely blank there for a second. Yes. So here we go. Back to the thing. This idea that we're all from the ground means we have all of these principles. We have the principle of yearning, which is darkness. We also have the light, the principle of light, which is divinity, which is the divine wisdom, logos. The problem with plants and animals is that there is no separation of the principles. What they get is a kind of instinctual element. Plants have the same principles as humans, but the centrum doesn't form because light and dark haven't separated, right? Like this is all Burmian language here that Schelling's using, and he's doing this on purpose. So there's no self-consciousness there within animals and rocks. There's no center there. There's no element of personality because there's no separation of the principles. The principles haven't separated for the center to form. So only the human being has the center, which he calls, in a sense, the soul or the spirit of personality, the seed of personality. And that's because when that center forms, what happens is that it's grounded in what's called the self-will of the ground, the pure urges. But in order to keep that centered, one has to attune themselves to what he calls the universal will, which is basically a Kantian principle. Know the world as a kingdom of ends. Treat each other as ends in themselves, right? Follow the universal will, which is essentially, don't abuse power, don't see the other as a thing, as a mere thing. Now, the minute that those, and see, this is something that Schelling will bring up, but animals kill to eat, right? They don't mourn the loss of the deer that they just murdered, right? They don't have this well, I don't know, according to Schelling, they don't have this self-awareness, this duality of principles, right? They have just one principle. So when the division of forces are dividing, Schelling says from our previous reading, the center is formed as the seat, as the ground of personality to maintain our being, to keep our being solidified. But being is completely reversed when that center moves to the periphery. And it's as simple as not seeing people as ends in themselves, as putting yourself over everyone else, subordinating your demands and wants over everyone else. The minute that you do that, you are no longer someone with integrity, someone with individuality, ipseity. You're egoity, pure ego. And the ego doesn't need a center. It only has the periphery that allows whatever crave and desire it wants to fill it. And this is the dangerous point. He calls this the moment of the reverse God, which is Satan in a sense, right? Going through the biblical tradition. The minute that you allow yourself to get this point, the erasure of the center, right? There's no longer will. It's just now craving, yearning. You're completely empty, allowing whatever to fill you up. We can see this, psychologically with, hoarders or people with some form of mental illness where they're craving, they're doing endless things.
It's like they become externally determined, right?
Exactly.
They don't determine themselves. They let something out there take over and determine on their behalf.
Right. And the point is that you can only, the true determination comes from interiority. It comes from the center. It comes from the will. It comes from being. So the minute that that's uprooted is when the principles, is when, in a sense, the self-will of the ground hovers or pulls the human being away from the universal will. He's using this theosophical language, and I love it, because rather than using a kind of logical syllogism, he's trying to show why one person wants to get up in the morning and murder someone and why someone doesn't, right? The person that wants to murder someone literally wants to consume that other into them, literally wants to remove their life, wants to consume them whole, get rid of them, or they enjoy something out of that. And Schelling says that's a complete perversion of the principles when that happens.
Yes, exactly. But it still happens, and
It
philosophers need
does.
to come up with some explanation of why it happens, right? Because
Right.
if the principles were the principles and they were all working, murders shouldn't happen, but they do. So
Yes.
what's gone wrong, right?
And this is the element of radical freedom. This is the
Right.
element of radical freedom. And I don't mean radical freedom in the Sartrean sense, like even the non-choice is a choice. I don't mean something like that in existentialism. I mean, it is that you attune yourself. I'm using Heideggerian language here on purpose because you who are following the self-will of the ground, you who are following craving, yearning, who are removing the center, who are moving towards the periphery, who are completely emptying themselves out, you are craving more, 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 more. There isn't enough, right? There's nothing enough to fill that craving. That is a complete dispersal of the principles. You are no longer able to get out of that, and that's part of your freedom. That's part of being separated. That's part of being in the ground. That's part of this whole thing. If we weren't free, then we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't have that ability to do that. So this is one of the things why Schelling has such a problem with Leibniz's theodicy, where goodness, conquers evil, and we live in the best of all possible worlds. That's a really, really simple. I'm really simplifying Leibniz, and I'm not trying to do that. But really, Schelling will say, look, light does transfix the dark. Light does win in the end. But however, every day is a new battle. Every day the individual is faced with the same struggle.
Yeah. We got a question from the public.
Okay.
Sobik 6339 asks, are there Schellingian artists?
Wow, that's a really good. That's a really. Are there Schellingian artists? Schellingian. It's funny. I don't know if there are Schellingian artists, but you're probably going to get a kick out of this. I tend to think that Interstellar is a Schellingian movie, and I'll tell you why I think that. Not only is it on this apocalyptic ruin of the Earth, and scientists are looking for a new nature or whatever. That's not it. But in this movie, what the climax of the movie is love. Love is this like cosmic love that drags individuals into the craziest point of the event horizon of this black hole. And in the end, their free choice to choose love over over them being famous astronauts wins in the day, right? The evil character, the evil Schellingian character here is Matt Damon's character who wants to get out of this planet, and will do anything. He'll kill people just to get off where he is. Perfect perversion of the principles there. Anyways, I see that as a Schelling, but Schellingian artists. Well, early Schelling saw art as an organ for philosophy, of bringing the subject and object together. So I think if one can talk about the way that nature expresses some kind of, or links you closer to nature, I think they would be quite Schellingian.
Right.
Yeah. Like Caspar David Friedrich is a perfect artist for that. He really shows the great, the kind of oceanic feeling of nature. I myself love the Scandinavian artists. I'm a huge fan of Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish painters because I think they really get this element of nature. They get this. There's a sense that, especially people like his name is Eugene Janssen. Eugene Janssen is a Swedish painter who's known for being a painter of blue. and he paints these swirls of blue and green that are beautiful landscapes from Sweden. And I
Hmm.
think you get this element of, you get this pure element that nature isn't just this, element, but it's part of everything. It's the horizon, it's the ground of the painting here. It's bringing in, but you never see actual individuals in it. He paints rooftops and city tops. There's also the Norwegian painter Peder Bolka, who does these fantastic landscapes, and also landscapes of oceans that really, really shows the elements. It shows that nature has its own kind of life to it. That's
Oh
just
yeah,
my
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's just yeah, that's just my own. These are just some of my own tastes. When it comes to when it comes to when it comes to when it comes to Hammershoy, who is a Danish painter, if you look at his landscapes, he does this really, really interesting thing with light. He has famous pictures of trees where the light is shining between each branch, and it looks, and as the color hits the branches, there's a kind of purple color emitted. There's something going on there. I always think that the Scandinavians have this really, really nice talent of giving light consciousness. It seems they have this play with light and shadow and line and color. That's
That
very
sounds a lot like Turner.
Turner again. Turner also, and I
He
mean,
also,
late Turner. So
yeah,
not his romantic era where he was painting lots of elements from Rome. I mean, where he was using egg yolk and saliva. The hurricane at sea is a perfect element of that. He was tied to the mast of the ship as he was going through that storm so he could paint it. Perfect example of that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know. I have to really think about, are there Schellingian artists? I'm
But
just giving you.
but did Schelling like have a theory of aesthetics or art?
He did. He did. I mean, it comes out the most in the System of Transcendental Idealism, and then he has a series of lectures on art that follow Schlegel to a degree. That's really interesting as well too.
Yeah.
Um,
We have more comments and questions, so we
but
got a
I
quote
feel
here.
bad. I feel bad about not answering
Sorry,
Sovik's.
can you
That's
repeat that?
okay. I feel bad that I didn't respond to Sovik's question properly.
Well, I think you made a good start.
Okay.
If Sabik wants to ask more, then he or she, they are very welcome. So we have a quote here from Marek Michalak 6620. Are you able to see it on the screen there?
Yeah, it says, "Whom God hath set forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past, through the forbearance of God." Yeah, I'm not seeing how. Maybe they can give some insight into what this is.
None was given. It was just a quote that was just plunked down.
Oh, maybe it was in relation to what we were talking about with evil and the ground.
Maybe, yeah.
There's this beautiful Schelling in the Ages of the World brings up Proverbs 8:23-31. I always cite this. I love this. I got this from the philosopher Sean McGraw when we were talking. This is his idea, but really it comes from Schelling, and he really hammers it out very nicely. That as the divine Godhead is hovering over the void, creating, the Godhead is unconscious while creating, but becomes conscious by the word that's already in the Father in eternity. It's this beautiful line where in the beginning, I was there before the creation, before the oceans, before the deep. And it sounds like divine Sophia speaking to the Godhead or speaking to the Father. It's beautiful. It's this really wonderful passage. He really likes this idea of like the unconscious past and the conscious present, and playing on these two elements.
Yeah. But specifically with this quote, it's about God putting Jesus forward as sacrifice to pay for the sins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see that connected to evil in Schelling? How he thinks about evil?
Well, Schelling's key person for the Schelling's key example of personality is Jesus. He does talk about Jesus as the main figure of personality. And obviously the opposite of personality is the reverse God. It's the reverse. It's reversing or inverting the principles, which would be the reverse God, Satan. So yes, I do see that. But it's really important that like the notion of sin is linked with this conception of freedom, right? That we have to be separate. So God is not the cause of evil. This is what Schelling wants to show. Evil's not privation. Evil's not part of Mithra, good principle versus the light principle, and they fight, and it's nothing like that. It's not Zoroastrianism, or it is something that's born into nature. It's in the seed of nature already from this movement in the ground, and that it's something that when fused with the understanding is always soliciting us. It's always enticed. It's there. And I think Schelling uses this theosophical and maybe theological examples because he wants to say evil does occur. It's there in the world. And the only way that we can really think about it and rationalize it, and rationalize why people do such terrible things is through this mythos. It's through this, like, these biblical examples. Not so much maybe the apple in the Garden of Eden, but in this element of it being there submerged in the ground. And now we have reason, we have knowledge, we have the logos. Now we have the tool to think how, why this is wrong, and to act. We can act in either way, right? It's freedom for him is the capacity to choose good or evil. He says that on page, I think it's 17, 18, the Freedom Essay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Chris. It's really,
yeah, sorry. I stopped abruptly there. I apologize.
That's all right. We got another question from Sobik. Is the craving related to bad infinity of Hegel? So I think that one we need to answer together.
Yes.
I think that refers to when we're talking about inverse freedom or inverse personality, or like being caught up by your desires and being externally determined. So do you see that as a form of infinite regress in Schelling?
Yeah, this is related to the spurious infinite, right? Hegel's argument for the bad infinity.
Yes.
So it's very important that okay, so let's just hash this out. I don't think it has anything to do with that with Hegel. What it has to do with is the design in the human being. Like when Schelling is talking about this origin story, right? That, by the way, is both pagan and non-pagan, right? He starts off talking about the Timaeus, the Korah, right? And that's like a wave wound whirling sea akin to Plato's matter. And then he starts talking about these forces in the ground. The craving is, if we look at this in terms of the Kabbalah, it's kind of like, or even in the Timaeus, when God creates the cosmos, he according to Schelling and Burma and some other people, he negates himself, but he doesn't negate himself par excellence, his existence part. He opens up a space, a receptacle that he puts the ground in. That is the ground. That becomes the world of nature. Nature in God, it's called. We can think of this in terms of Spinoza as natura naturans,
Right.
nature nurturing. So that ground doesn't have reason. It doesn't have the understanding. It has the unreason, according to Schelling. And the minute that beings grow in that, the first thing that they have is just darkness. He says this, all birth is birth from darkness into light. All creatures are born in the dark, meaning they're born in the soil. They're born in darkness. They're born in craving, in egoity, in yearning. And the yearning from this ground mixes with, as Schelling says, the understanding, which comes down as the biblical word, the logos.
Right.
And that's when it becomes a will. He actually states that the craving is a will, but without understanding. And when the yearning mixes with the logos or reason, it becomes a will in will, he says, is the quote.
Yeah. It sounds very sort of proto-Freudian.
Well, there's an argument for this. Matt Fleisch wrote a book called The Unconscious, The Origins of the Unconscious, Schelling and Freud. So that might be something that maybe the viewers might be interested in, especially when we get to the course, when they have presentations. Maybe if someone wants to present on Freud and Schelling, that might be really interesting. But yes, it's really important that craving is this longing, this yearning, Sehnsucht. It's this yearning for more than itself. It wants to subordinate everything to itself. In the ages of the world, he relates light and darkness to a will that wills itself, or a will that wills nothing. It wills nothing but itself, but its eternality, its eternity, and a will that wills something, which he calls love, a will that wills creation, wills substance. So he gets a little more mature in his argumentation in the ages of the world, where it's not as poetic, not as maybe cryptic. He gets a little more clear with that. So that's what he's trying to get at.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just to circle back to the question. It's not the case that craving and desire has a kind of spurious quality to it in Schelling.
No, but it doesn't. It does have a kind of cyclical cycle. Like if there's no center, if there's no reason, no understanding, then it would just continuously will itself, will nothingness. It would yearn, constantly yearn. Right? He says in the treatise on page 27 that if we want to take this into human terms, it's like the yearning that craves to give birth to itself. It wants more. It wants more out of life. And we have that principle in us as human beings, to want more than ourselves, to put ourselves above everyone else until we get reason, until we get this rational principle, this understanding. And that's when things change. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. It reminds me of how Paul Tillich sort of deals with the issue. Because the problem, as he sees it, is that, well, the nature of our being is infinity. But the problem is we keep putting finite things as the things that are meant to fulfill our infinite needs. And that's where the issue is. We keep on slotting in more and more finite things, expecting that to fix our infinite need, when we really should be targeting infinite things. Like, infinite activities, creative projects, God, religion, and so on, right? Do you see a kind of a similarity there, or a contrast?
Well, Tillich wrote 2 habilitation theses on Schelling, and considered himself as a Schellingian in his younger years. So Yeah, no, I see that perfectly. Tillich's a great philosopher. You nailed that perfectly. I really liked how you said that. You have this really nice talent, Philip, of like taking my Schlingen, what we call it, Schlingianese, and turning it into like proper speak, like for everybody. It's nice.
But thank you. I don't feel like I'm doing much in terms of maybe just rephrasing things a little bit. But thank you, appreciate that. It's very
No, no,
kind.
I agree. You know, when you read lots of Heidegger, you start speaking Heideggerianese all the time, and then it's hard to get out of that. Yeah,
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 you get trapped in a philosopher,
you do. Yes,
which is important then to just read widely, right? Not just stick to one
true.
thinker, but
Yep.
engage with multiple thinkers. Um, so for people joining us just now, it's myself and with Christopher here talking about Schelling, loose and fast, and also referring to his upcoming course on Schelling,
Yep.
specifically Schelling's text, The Freedom Essay, and we'll put some information about that in the description somewhere, but you can find it on our website, sphil.xyz, under courses. There you'll find information about the upcoming Schelling course. And the first seminar starts on Sunday. It's going to be 8 weeks of seminars. It's going to include digital lecture, pre-recorded lectures, and also the potential of having one-on-one sessions with Christopher if you would prefer that. So there's like a 3-tiered payment scheme on the course. So if you're interested in digging deeper into Schelling and figuring out, well, what was the philosopher really about, the text is really the best place to go to, right?
Yes, it
That's
is.
that's the philosopher's own voice that we can access, right, and make up our own minds about what they were thinking and their concepts and arguments. Christopher is gonna guide us in this course, right? You've worked hard on Schelling. You doctoral thesis on Schelling, so you're the man to guide us through the darkness and
There's
the
light
light.
at the tunnel.
Yeah, and the mix of both of them. So if
Yes.
you have questions about Schelling or about the course, feel free to shoot in the chat. We'll try to get to it. Sorry, you were going to say something, Chris?
No, I was just going to say, and those that pay for the seminar, they also get the pro seminar with Dr. Andrew Bowie.
Right. So there's guest lecture,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
People who sign up for the seminar, there will be a guest lecture by a Schellingian scholar who's written on Schelling, German idealism, and a bunch of stuff. And we will give a guest lecture, and that will be part of the course as well. Right? The pro seminar is actually the bit where the students themselves present.
Oh,
So,
okay. That's it. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah. No, but Dr. Bowie is fantastic. He was the one that really popularized Schelling scholarship in the 90s and early 2000s, and he's translated Schelling, and yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be really fun. Yeah.
Like this is Schelling is not that well known these days, right? He's fallen a bit on the wayside. But back in his day, he was regarded as a genius, wunderkind, and rock star philosopher, and he was very productive. And he wrote this text called the Freedom Essay, uh, and it's, one might say, it's one of the most daring texts of its time. What it tries to do, what it tries to combine, all the ideas and thoughts.
Yeah,
So,
Hegel actually said that it was one of the best speculative philosophical works, and that he wished that more works followed after it. He wished that there were more systematic works like it, like Schelling continued the system, but he stopped writing after that.
so there you have it, right? If you're not even interested in Schelling, but interested in Hegel, you can take this course too, because Hegel thought it was super important and interesting. So there's, and if you don't have any relationship to Schelling yet, you might have one to Hegel, and through Hegel find your way into Schelling, because usually you find other philosophers via philosophers and so on, right?
Yeah, no, true.
We got a comment here from Geolazakis. It was interesting reading Schelling's lecture on Samothracian deities.
Yes.
Response to that?
Yeah, this is so Schelling never published The Ages of the World, which he called his baby. He felt like it needed a lot of work, and he held it from publication. But instead, what he did was he summarized the ages in what he called a preface to the ages, which is the deities for Samothrace. And he considers Samothrace the birthplace of a mixture of Semite peoples and Greek all coming together, and the birth of the Orphic cults and mixtures of languages, and it's really, really brilliant. There's a new translation of it by Jason Worth, Alexander Bilda, and David Farrell Krell. Jason Worth's a friend of mine, actually. And it's fantastic. It's got the real text. It's got pictures in it from David Krell's trip. And it also has all of Schelling's notes. So it's really, really brilliant. Maybe, if Philip lets me, maybe we can do another course on Schelling, but do the small ages of the world text, and then maybe read one of this side by side and see how they work. That would be huge, but
start putting it on your wish list now, people. Maybe it'll become a reality.
Yeah, but no, it's a brilliant text. Schelling sees it as, it was a lecture actually to the Bavarian Academy of the Arts and Sciences in 1815. And really, he goes through a lot of brilliant things. Yep. But yeah, it's beautiful. I'm glad that somebody's actually reading it. There's not a lot of Schillingian scholarship on the deities of Samothrace, which is interesting. I don't know why they don't have that. Not a lot of people are writing on it.
Well, maybe they'll becoming more soon. So I want to ask you, Chris, what are one or two of the most crucial yet easily misunderstood key terms in the freedom essay?
Ooh. Well, the first would be essence, Wesen. I'd say ground, and I'd say Ungrund. But now let me just say something about this first. This is about the essence of human freedom. So we're looking for the essence of human freedom. Now, at the beginning of the treatise, Schelling makes a distinction that a philosophy, a systematic philosophy, even I think Hegel would agree to this, maybe you can chime in on this in a second, that a philosophy should stand as a worldview, as a Weltanschauung, right? Worldview. And essentially, there's a difference between how we view freedom and the fact of freedom, the facticity of it, Heidegger likes to say. So the feeling of freedom is in every human being. We crave feeling. We crave freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of freedom is this dormant concept. The essence of it is dormant. And that essence is tied to many things, absolute identity, the Ungrund, all of these things. But Schelling is really trying to unroot or uproot this conception of the essence of what human freedom is. And you're going to see, those of you that are watching the lectures and coming to the seminars, that the essence of freedom really is in relation to system, freedom, and ground. All of them are intertwined. So the essence of freedom, right? It's bound to this conception of the ground that we've been talking about recently, and the center, and will and all of these ideas, the true essence of it, right? It's bound in this kind of ontological setup that Schelling is writing and an unfurling for everyone.
Okay.
But there's also another thing. We talked about ground and we talked about existence in the third lecture. But I didn't really go over existence because that represents the ideal or the essence. So there's essence, ideal, and then there's real, right? Just like with Hegel, I guess, maybe early Hegel, subject, object, real, ideal. And the ideal you'll see is connected more to God's essence, which will come out later on in a couple lectures down or in the next two lectures. So really, he's trying to unearth the essence of somehow, which is linked to being, to the heart of our own personality, the heart of our being. So it's very complex, but he essentially has an idea of what essence is, what identity is, and it's kind of like we were talking about a coin, right? There's a coin, heads and tails, how some of us, oh no, I don't want to go there too far yet. Let's just say that he's unearthing the concealed essence of freedom. I was about to go into this whole thing with absolute identity, and I don't want to do that right now. So
That's fair enough. So, but you said that he's interested in unpacking like the essence of freedom, and then you said
yes,
that essence is comprised of system, ground, and freedom.
right.
So freedom is a moment of freedom. Is that what's going on here?
Well, freedom, the essence of freedom ontologically, is that moment of choosing the good or the evil,
Right.
right? He also says that the essence of freedom lies in the primordiality of the will,
Okay.
right? And the will is only formed when the yearning and reason join together, which form a will and will. So it's really unpacked. He's really unpacking a lot of these systematic elements.
Yeah.
So the essence of freedom really lies in the ground of reality, and the ground of reality is enmeshed in system. And what is system for him? System is this element of the parts within the whole of his philosophy or of reality. So really, they all kind of come full circle. System, freedom, system, and ground. So
Yeah.
freedom it relates more to the personal, relates to decisions, relates to the kind of inner quality of our being. And ground is that all things must have a ground, as Schelling says. Whether that's realism, whether that's the beginning of the cosmos, the receptacle, or the fact that we have this center inside of us, this center of personality. But all of these are all kind of intertwined, and you'll see that from freedom we go through multiple issues like pantheism, good and evil, personality, the center, and then finally end up in love. So it's all kind of enmeshed. This is why I see this as a massive ontological project. I think Heidegger said the same thing. Yeah.
That's great. So there is obviously a lot to unpack in this text, and that's why there's a whole course on it, right? It's a
Yeah.
very daring text, philosophical text, but also very dense. One might even say cryptic at times, because it just
Very.
packs into each page, right? Because he's drawing on myth, metaphors, theology, philosophy. He's like going all over the place. So, what do you see as kind of the main takeaway or the revelation that one can expect to achieve at the end of this course? After wrestling with Schelling for 8 weeks intensely.
I think it's one of those texts. I think it's a text like the Phenomenology of Spirit. I think it's a text that shows the roots and origins of consciousness, gives us elements of where the self originated from, how the self is so is tied up to myth and tied up to stories, tied up to being, tied up to what is this human being, but also showing how everything, how neatly tied and connected the world is, life. What I think people can get from this is, it's funny, is whether you're religious or not religious, or whether you're a philosopher or not philosopher, the freedom essay gives you so much questions, so much philosophical questioning, so much. It really directs you into multiple issues, multiple areas that, Heidegger says this very nicely too. He states that that one is immersed in a system of being, but then finds themselves in a theology, and then at times in ontology, and then finds themselves in a romantic piece on love. I think he says that in the essays that in his lectures. So that's a good summation of what's going on. However, the takeaway from this is that it really makes you think about your own personality, your own characteristic, your own choices, and whether
Right.
these choices and how these choices made you who you are today, or certain things like that. I like this piece because I think it's interesting. It's got like it's a piece on the origin of the beginning, and then the problem of evil, and then being, and then of course relations with others, and it's got some ethics into it, and then finally it ends with one of the most cryptic concepts, the Ungrund, which to this day scholars are like, what do we do with this concept?
Yeah.
What do we do with this non-ground? I just think it's a piece that if you want to investigate yourself and Schelling at the same time, it's a great piece to study,
Yeah.
because you learn a lot more about yourself as you're reading this
Right.
text, because you're trying to think about certain situations that you've been in yourself, especially when he starts talking about evil and Judas and what corrupts, what is what happens with evil and non-being and being. Wow, I'm really dancing all over the place. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. Would it be fair to say that the text kind of invites you to entertain that maybe the problems you're having in life with regards to what you want to do, what you want to decide, who you are, what your nature is, etc., what's your ultimate concern, and so on, isn't something just personal to you, but is part of a much longer and more ancient or even eternal threat that's out there, that is an open
Yep,
question, and that you cannot figure yourself out without also figuring out being. So
absolutely.
figuring out the deepest problems, the deepest questions about yourself, presupposes you have some sort of theory or answer with regards to ontology and theology and the big questions. The two
Right.
aren't separated from one another. And I think that's what kind of is a great potential in philosophy, is that makes the divine personal and then the personal divine, right?
Yes, it does. Yep. Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right about that. That's exactly what the text does. It is one of Sean McGrath once said the text is deliciously confused, and he meant that in a nice way. Not that it's confused, but that it's so many issues are at stake in the text in 70 pages, being personality, evil, freedom, theology, philosophy. All of these are,
Yeah,
and and he's redefining terms like system and world and freedom and essence, and even Marcus Gabriel, who states, if you take out all of the theosophical elements, if you take it completely out, if you just remove those elements, what you have is a genuine theory of predication,
right.
a
Yeah,
genuine logical theory of predication in the Freedom Essay, in terms of ground and existence and Ungrund and later, and he redefines his own philosophy, calling it transcendental ontology. He also has pieces on Hegel a bit. I don't know how you feel about his reading of Hegel, but his reading of Schelling, with the removal of the theological elements, I actually think you need the theological elements in Schelling to read,
mm,
to get more in depth of it. But he reads it as a kind of analytic philosophical theory of predication, which I think is interesting. So if you're interested in analytic philosophy as well too, there is a definite logical argumentation about predication, about the theory of of that in the text as well too.
yeah. There is a lot of ways one can engage with Schelling, and looking at it analytically
Yep.
proves to be very fruitful as well, right? So it isn't
Yes.
just this steeped in the mythopoetic
Yeah.
language, but you think that it's necessary. It is doing some work, right, in terms of the concepts.
Yeah, no, I think if you remove the mythical poetic element of it, you lose a lot of it.
Mm.
Because it's not that Schelling is a mystic, because I don't think he is. He gets this talent from Botter. He gets this element from Botter that theosophical and theological concepts make philosophical concepts more rigid, more rigorous, and heavier. It adds life to them, he thinks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, any final thoughts, ideas we want to wrap this up with, Chris?
I just think that I I really enjoy talking about these ideas and about this work. It's one of my favorite philosophical texts, and I'm really interested and intrigued by other people that find it just as interesting. And if you're new to Schelling, don't get scared by any of the things we talked about today. Um, it will immerse you completely. You'll get immersed into it, and it'll feel like home once you start reading and getting engrossed in the text, I think. So I'm looking forward to all the students and the seminars and emails and questions and meeting everybody. So feel free to, say hello, email me, or, let's begin and work through this text together.
Awesome.
That sounded very clumpy. I'm sorry. Clunky. I'm sorry.
It is a text that's famously demanding, right?
It
So
is.
let me just end with this question. It's a text that's famously demanding. How is the course structured to make the Freedom Essay accessible to students with no prior familiarity to Schelling or German idealism?
Great question. I when I My lectures are meant to break down all of the main concepts and main ideas for the readings. But in that, I also give background to everything we're talking about. So for those of you that watched the first lecture that didn't know anything about the pantheism controversy, I brought up the pantheism controversy. We talked about Lessing. We talked about Mendelssohn. We talked about Jacobi and who they were and what the problem was. So I like to think of filling in the kind of historical elements that are important to the dialogue, important to the treatise, the essay, the freedom essay. So I won't ever leave you with, where did this concept come from? Believe it or not, the third lecture, I start off with some readings from Jakob Böhme, a line from it, and then we go back to it in the lecture, and you see the kind of mythopoetical at heart in the essay. So it's really, really interesting. So I make sure that everyone has an anchor. Everyone
Right.
has an anchor within the course and within the material.
Yeah, I
And
think that's really important.
and sometimes it's just, historical element. It's sometimes just who this person is, their dates, and I'll always post that in the lectures as well too. And
Yeah.
there's more questions in the seminars that someone wants to bring up, feel free.
So you'll be unpacking, the themes, the concepts of the text, but also providing historical context, even the sources of what Schelling is referring to here and there, what he has in mind, right? This helps to enrich reading it, because we don't have the same context anymore in our day and age, right?
We don't.
A lot of it is lost to us just naturally, right, by the passage of time. But taking your course, one can really bring oneself up to speed really quickly with the context and the issues, and then the text will breathe, I think, much more easily. And then on top of that, there's going to be live seminars where you guys will discuss, in a big room, whatever questions people have, and you'll guide and facilitate the seminar. I think that's really the best place to sort of wrestle with these kind of heavy-duty metaphysical German texts. Is to struggle together. Not, don't be alone with difficult stuff when you're learning. It's easier to do it with others.
It is much easier with group, and 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads are better than 1, right? Always.
Right. 1 head that doesn't make spirit, and you need 2 and more.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as Chris was saying, feel free to shoot us questions, either here on YouTube or through our emails or whatever, right? We're happy to answer any questions you might have about the course. And we hope to see you there. Hope this whetted your appetite.
Thank you for coming.
Improve the life of your mind.